Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on our Bid Ready ESG webinar. I'm Stephen Henry, joined today by Emma, who's our principal ESG consultant. We'll do some full intros in a second. Just before I get to that, we're just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. So very brief, if I can just remind you to unmute so you can hear. I hope you've got us coming through loud and clear on your speakers at the minute. If you do have any questions, please just fire them through on the comments element, and Emma and I will be keeping an eye on those. We will try and get to 5 minutes of question time at the end of the webinar as well. The session is being recorded, and we will circulate slides to everyone after it's completed as well. So no need to do any of that yourself. We'll share those out. And just a reminder to be respectful if people are raising questions, asking anything, sharing, just please be respectful in the chat. Quick introduction to us. Positive Planet have launched in 2021 on the back of seeing an opportunity in the marketplace for what was a full service sustainability consultancy for small through to medium and large size organizations, but predominantly in that sort of mid-size is where we're optimized to service. Say full service, we work right through from helping you to understand your environmental impact on carbon emissions, putting reduction plans in place, through to social impact, and right through to governance and compliance as well. So it really is one-stop shop for anything you need. And the subject we're talking about today is really at the heart of what we do. We're very big on ESG, supporting organizations to derive benefit from their ESG strategy and how you get a really clear return on investment from that activity. So we're going to be talking a bit about that today. We work with about 700 organizations across a really wide range of sectors, and that includes manufacturing, transport, healthcare, construction, to name just a few of the ones we work with. But we can support pretty much anybody across any sector. I'm going to jump on to the next slide. So quick introduction to me. I'm Stephen. I'm one of the founders of Positive Planet and CEO. I've been involved in sustainability for what must be over 10 years now. And my passion comes from a background in sales and marketing and trying to find that business benefit for organizations to engage in sustainability and broader ESG as well. So how do you drive business benefit and that deliver benefits to the environment, to our planet, to people as well? Emma, do you want to do a quick introduction?
Sure, thanks, Stephen. So as Stephen mentioned, my name's Emma. I'm Principal ESG Consultant here at Positive Planet. I'm working in corporate sustainability for 4 or 5 years now, and I've worked with large enterprises down to SMEs across all phases of ESG. So looking into materiality, moving into strategy, and finally reporting. To get started today, we thought we would just do a little bit of a question to you guys. So if you don't mind dropping in the chat and just telling us who you are, where you're from, if you're regularly responding to tenders. Any other info is useful for us as well. So if tenders are a key part of your sales process, have you noticed any requirements change, that type of thing, just helps us build better and more specific content going forwards. So feel free to do that as we move through the next couple of slides.
So we're just going to talk briefly about why is ESG and why now. And one of the things that I regularly see and we get feedback from clients on is that they are seeing an increasing amount of scoring in the bid and tender process against what we deem as being ESG criteria. Often talked about as sort of social impact, but it's starting to carry much more weighting across a broader range of ESG criteria. Typically, if you're selling into central government, local government, large corporates, etc., you can expect to see somewhere between 10 and 40% of the scoring within the tender process being weighted against ESG criteria. And we're seeing more and more of this coming through now. What I typically see as well is organizations not doing this very well. And I suspect that that's why some of you are here. So it's kind of how do we get through this in the process and talking about how do we get better afterwards. And then it comes round again and you're still trying to kind of manipulate the questions and the answers and talk about things that you're going to do rather than the things that you have done potentially. So what we're going to talk about today is just how you improve that scoring, how you can do that really quickly, and how you can optimize your chances. So why now? Well, we're seeing an increasing amount of procurement decisions being based on ESG or environmental factors. And I've got a slide coming up that's really recent from one of our existing clients who's just won a massive contract on the back of this. And it was a key criteria against a local government contract. Um, and it's typical in most tenders now. I speak to people across a lot of sectors, whether it's technology, construction, manufacturing, where this has been a major factor. And we're seeing nearly 8 out of 10 contracts where procurement decisions have been based on those environmental factors. 70% of organizations say that delivering against corporate ESG or sustainability goals is now a key driver of that procurement program. And more than 65% of suppliers expect you to meet their sustainability standards. And this is partly due to things like the carbon accounting process that most organizations have somewhere between 70 and 90% of their carbon emissions sat within the supply chain. So they're very much looking to get suppliers on board to support them and help them in that process of reducing their emissions. They can't do it themselves. So improving that tender score significantly improves your chances of winning. Even if your pricing and technical offering is really strong, it's that ESG criteria is going to be the thing that can really help get you across the line and stand out. Just want to jump on there, Emma. So ESG is becoming really a minimum qualifying standard now. It's no longer nice to have. It's no longer deemed as being something that is just an add-on. It's really an expectation from your clients. Procurement teams require suppliers to provide verifiable ESG data, so they want to see that you're working with third parties and that being a reputable organization. And they do just disqualify bidders that can't meet those standards. Furthermore, compliance with ESG and procurement's been driven by regulatory and reporting for corporate sustainability reporting directives or equivalent type of frameworks. So why it matters? Well, it means that even if your tenders where price and quality still matter, the baseline expectation from many clients is that the bidder will already have certain ESG credentials. So a lack of those, missing out on those, means that you're just ruled out and you put yourself at some sort of disadvantage. So just a bit about who we typically work with. So just a little bit about us. So, or what typical client for us rather. So we typically work with mid-sized organizations, service, manufacturing based, etc. 50 to 250 employees, and generally with a turnover between 5 and 50 million. I would say typical client for us is that you're in that bid and tender process, and they're typically high value contracts. I'd say north of sort of 50K is what you're bidding for to get that level of return on investment of working with us. We typically see clients getting at least a sort of 10x ROI is what we'd be looking for. So that's why you need to have a higher value contract bid process as well. If you don't have ESG criteria strategy in place, we can help you with that. That would be ideal. Maybe you're missing things like carbon accounting data as well. So core problem that you'd be trying to solve is that you're being excluded from those tenders because you can't demonstrate clear sustainability criteria or net zero commitments. You've got fragmented data or superficial ESG narratives, and you're trying to meet the requirements without having anything substantial behind that. Sales teams probably lacking the tools or the ability to talk about what it is you're doing and why that's beneficial, be that either with clients or in that RFP type process as well. And you don't have the time or the expertise internally to undertake some of the activity that's necessary and really understand what to do and where to go with that as well, because there are quite a broad range of skills needed. And like most organizations, I suspect margins are tight, so you need this to be done in a really cost-effective way that generates business benefit and has a really fast turnaround so that you can see that impact quite quickly and get that return on investment. This is one that we've just seen in the last couple of weeks. So it's a really live example. And we talk about always trying to get clients to at least a sort of 10x ROI. But I've got a number of examples that are just at these sort of unbelievably high levels of return on investment. So this is from a client in the construction sector. They've just won some significant contracts with a really high value against them. But the feedback in the bid process was that the specific detail they gave around the carbon reduction measures and the broader ESG criteria, how they would reduce impact within the project, was what gave them the advantage. So that was the thing that helped them stand out. And I see a lot of this in the process of us working with clients, where it's that's the bit that just differentiates you from the competition in the process.
Nice. So building ESG into your bid strategy, what does this look like? So 4 easy steps we've just outlined here. So first one being create an ESG narrative that really aligns with your client's values. So think about what actually matters most to the client and mirror that back to them in the responses. Secondly, quantify those impacts. So think about carbon savings, social benefits, and use numbers as evidence or key performance indicators. So don't just say you aim to reduce carbon and have great health and safety policies, for example. Really include that percentage reduction in carbon year on year and mention how your accident and lost time rate is down due to those progressive policies. Thirdly, always demonstrate that continuous improvement. So again, don't just whack in like random targets and do nothing to achieve them. Think about the targets that make sense for your organization. Is that target ambitious but achievable? And explain what you do year on year to then nudge towards actually making that target. And lastly, incorporate ESG into your case studies and delivery plan as part of that tender process. So again, this really highlights how ESG has been considered in the past. So using the case studies to show those stories and how it will be considered going forward as part of that delivery plan. Again, once again, evidencing how ESG has been carefully considered throughout that whole project that you're tendering for. And I won't read this all out, but it's best to start with a vision for ESG. So there's one that I've highlighted here, really covers specifically the environmental, social and governance pillars, and then mentions how ESG runs through all operations and drives positive change for its stakeholders. So use this as your North Star to really guide everything you do in ESG and pull on this narrative throughout your bid. And this all forms part of ESG strategy. This example here is just taking from the environmental pillar of any strategy, and it'd be a really key part of your tender. So we've got the ESG areas and commitments on the left, plus any targets and KPIs and that link to the UN SDGs. So you can also include here any key initiatives and responsible owners. And this is a really important document for answering tender requirements because it houses a lot of that information that they're asking for, such as actions, targets, KPIs. And when I say it's key as part of your bid, I don't mean just copying and pasting this into the bid, but it's actually just taking out those key elements from the strategy so you can really specifically answer the requirements. So having a defined strategy really adds in that layer of governance because you're documenting this process, you're layering in that accountability and you're ensuring that ESG does actually move forward. But the strategy is really just one driver in answering bids. So along with strategy listed at the top here, there are other key elements which are worth thinking about to get bid ready. So, for example, your sustainability or socially linked policies and procedures, anything from environmental, water waste, health, safety, D&I, anything that really supports those topics of material important to your organisation. Plus, as Stephen was saying earlier, your sales and marketing and bid teams should be trained and confident in ESG and net zero conversations. So this helps everyone really speak that same language and understand the technical requirements listed by the tender. And they'll know how to exactly meet those requirements, as we often see tenders can be written in jargon, which, can be really difficult to interpret. Achieve or be actively working towards a recognised ESG certification. So again, it gives you that layer of gravitas behind that response. So think of CDP, EcoVadis, B Corp. So these certifiers may be slightly more applicable to any corporates on the webinar today because corporates have bigger budgets, they have more resource to actually go into getting certified. But for SMEs, it's worth having a look into if any of these have the SME reporting route, which usually comes at a much more reduced fee. Or perhaps even before going down this route, explore voluntary reporting options. So getting you used to reporting against a best practice framework while giving you that layer of credibility. So any company could pick up the GRI standards or the VSME standards and report to them, and that is considered best practice as well. And you really want to think about having a carbon footprint measurement in place, plus a credible SBTI aligned plan to achieve net zero. So emissions is always going to hold such a huge weighting in ESG. So making sure those foundational elements are properly considered is going to put you in the best stead. The thing is as well, you probably have quite a lot of this information scattered across the organisation already. So part of this is you're really just collating everything, putting it into a tender impact toolkit, and assigning that owner to fully manage the tender process. We've got a few common pitfalls as well that we often see. So first one being generic ESG statements without evidence. So don't fall into the trap of saying everything but nothing really at all at the same time. Take that really considered approach to your response and think about what evidence supports the statement that you're making. Procurement teams at the other side will be able to spot any generic wording instantly, and it really lacks that genuine ESG integration and doesn't really demonstrate impact. Secondly, ignoring governance or supply chain sections. So huge areas that often get overlooked in tender process. Responses often really emphasize recycling or carbon, but ignore social and governance aspects. So neglecting these pillars can mean losing marks. So always think about kind of social value, such as community engagement and quality, and governance, so ethics, transparency, and supplier audits, that type of thing. Thirdly, failing to link ESG outcomes to contract performance. So responses describe company initiatives, but don't really explain how they'll benefit from the contract. So procurement teams, again, they're scoring on relevance and added value and not just good intentions. And finally, inconsistent data between policies and bid content as well. So there might be really ambitious commitments in there, but with no process or tracking or accountability behind them. So make sure you're always referencing any monitoring frameworks or responsible roles within the organisation, such as your ESG committee, any quarterly board reviews or third-party audits. So when it comes to weak responses, we do have a couple of examples here. So I just pulled together a really basic, typical ESG tender question. Describe how your organisation integrates environmental and social responsibility into its operations and supply chain. So first up, we have the weak response. Again, I won't read this all out, but it's vague and generic. It uses phrases like take seriously and where possible, which don't really mean anything. There's no evidence or data behind anything and no measurable commitments. It doesn't really link to procurement or contract delivery either, and really lacks any concrete examples or proof of implementation. But we also have strong response. This one is much longer. So again, I'm not going to read this out because we'll send you all these slides afterwards. But this one is strong because it's really specific. It uses quantifiable data. So you've got targets, metrics, timelines in there. It's clearly structured around the ESG pillars and links out to policies and tangible outcomes, shows governance and accountability mechanisms, and demonstrates direct relevance to the tender delivery, which was in this case a carbon reduction and supplier standards. So a couple of examples there to go over. Stephen, I'm going to pass back to you for one of our real life case studies with Phoebus.
Yeah, so Phoebus work in the financial services software sector. They've been a client of ours for about 3 years now. We've been measuring the carbon footprint, gone back to the 2021 emissions. We also work with them on things like reduction planning. They've gone through SBTI accreditation with us. We've helped them set up their green team, and I occasionally work with the board as well. And for the last 3 years, we've been doing ESG strategy and reporting, and you can see an example of the report that we create. We have a full services design team in-house that can help you output beautiful documents like this. And the benefit of doing something like this is it really enables your sales team to talk coherently and accurately about what you're doing. They've got something to share with clients or prospective clients that just works really well in that sales process. And also to help you in that bid recontracting process as well, of articulating what you're doing with to your existing clients as well to help retain them. And this has been really effective for Phoebus. They've used it as a means that's helped them win new clients, and as a result of that, they've got really significant return on investment against the activity that they do with us. it's very typical that we see this from this sort of activity, and it's always difficult showing a multitude of case studies. But if anybody's got any questions around sector-specific case studies, Emma and I are happy to kind of meet up and talk to you about those as well. But as you can see, there's some significant benefits from doing this at relatively low cost. I think you'll find that it's a accessible and affordable activity to undertake with then a really strong return against it.
Nice. Just got a few key takeaways before I pass back to Stephen to run over next steps. So just a few things to remember. If you're bidding for tenders, either in the public or private space, you need to treat ESG criteria really seriously. It's not this optional extra, but it needs to be a real material part of that evaluation. You should always prepare measurable ESG evidence where you can. So there's metrics and targets, any recent performance, supply chain actions, governance and transparency. And it's really not just about having an ESG policy. So you must be able to show how that actually maps to the subject matter of the tender. So, for example, how your emissions reductions relate to the contract scope, and how you will deliver continuous improvement over the contract term. And finally, get all of that information just in one place. Create a tender impact toolkit, have everything ready to go so that when you're going through the bid process, you're not scrambling around trying to find all this information or speak to people in the organisation. You've got it all in one set place. And Stephen, do you want to run over next steps?
Yeah, sure. I'm just looking through the chat there, and there's some consistent messaging around we tender for contracts, a lot of ESG questions coming up, as we were saying at the start of the webinar there. We've got three options that we just wanted to share that help you get started really quickly and help you move forward. And the first one's around some strategy workshops that we run, and we can either do those with you exclusively as an organization. So we come to you, we work with your leadership team, other key members of your organization, and help you to work out the next steps and the things that you need to do in terms of that broader ESG strategy. So help you getting what could be a 3 to 5 year plan in place and thinking about the key actions you needed to undertake. From that, we'll help you work out then what the costings would look like that on that activity, and then a return on investment against that. So that's the first one, which is that ESG strategy accelerator, and that's done with you and your team. The second option, if you're looking for a quick start, low cost solution, is we do that collectively as well. So we invite a small number of non-competing organizations to come into our office on a monthly basis and join a workshop that would be run typically with Emma and myself. And we take you through a very similar process, but where you're working a bit more individually with our support rather than your wider team. And it helps you kind of pull together the thoughts around the strategy with our support. And it works really well if you're looking for maybe some peer-to-peer advice, building a network yourself as well. So there's an option there at really low cost if you want to come and join us. So we have got a QR code and a couple of slides where you can scan and just contact Emma and myself, book a meeting in if you want to talk to us about either of those workshops. So that's the kind of really quick way of getting started and building out the strategy. If you're a bit further on and you think you're kind of just ready to jump in and get started, we do have a ready-to-go ESG package that's designed specifically to support organizations get bid ready, essentially. So this covers everything you need to optimize your ESG bid scoring, win more business, and keep existing clients. So now we've got a few of our existing clients on there who have probably done some of this, so that it can be tuned very much to what you're doing and where you are in the journey currently. But we would take you through a strategy process with this to help you understand how to optimize that bid scoring. We would help you understand what your clients were typically looking for and what the market requirements are against things like net zero plans, against ESG reporting. We'll help you stay ahead and understand what regulatory compliance looks like and the landscape on that. And then we build a toolkit for you. And one of the challenges typically is answering some of those questions and doing those in an effective way without that being a difficult process every time it comes up. So we give you those answers that are tailored to your clients, tailored to you as an organization, that you can just drop into the tender process and save significant time in that activity. We also sort of set you up with our ESG software, and if you're doing carbon accounting, you'll get access to those modules as well. So we've got best-in-class technology that supports you to minimize workload on your side and speed up that process significantly. And we would be looking to get ideally to those 700 plus levels of return investment, but typically we always see north of 10x ROI against the activity as well. So there's an opportunity there to get some real business benefit if you engage in this. So both of those you can access, or all three of those rather, you can access through the QR code on the next slide there, Emma, please. If you just want to scan that QR, that should take you through so you can book a meeting with Emma and I, and we're happy to discuss how you can progress with that and give you quotes, timescales for anything that you're interested in, or discuss dates for any of the workshops as well. The process typically with us is we'll understand your needs, your requirements, we'll talk to you about solutions, and then typically within a couple of days we'll get back to you with a fully priced proposal and quotation. And that's it. We've got time for about 5 minutes of questions at the end. I think we're doing pretty well, keeping the time. So if people just want to drop anything into the chat, that's great. So I've just seen one coming through there from Fiona. So how is ROI typically measured and quantified in smaller organizations? Is it reduction of waste or cost, or other measures like enhanced brand, which is harder to measure? Emma, do you want to pick up that? Do you want me to?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Fiona's kind of answered her own question. So yes, we've gone a lot into more on the financial side in terms of ROI, but when it does come to smaller organisations, it is worth looking outside of that box as well. So as you mentioned, enhanced brand, reputation, employee retention as well, and hiring. So just being able to show ESG as a key element of your organisation and culture as well does help in those small elements which don't necessarily have a financial figure attached to them. Yeah, Steve, I don't know if you've got anything else to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, on a really simple level, I would be saying, look, against those financial metrics, you're looking at the value of the contract, we'll be looking at your current win rate, where we think we can get that to. So how many additional clients, contracts could you win as a result of improving your ESG scoring? Also looking at the risk elements against current clients that you have as well. So checking to see if you're aligned with them, and does it present risk if you don't get aligned with them as well. So there's that. They're the two key things I think where you get the biggest financial benefit. So it's opportunity, risk versus the cost is what we would typically look at against those financial metrics.
And one in from Abigail on, we've been requested to submit to CDP from a customer. Will this help our tender bid? So yes, Abigail, we get this a lot. We get a lot of clients coming through who are requested to do CDP as well. I would say CDP will support to a degree. It depends on the tender bid because CDP focuses more on the environmental pillar. So it's on your emissions, water and forests. So if that tender is requesting specific information about those topics, then it will support. However, if the tender is looking at ESG more broadly or focusing maybe on the social pillar, it's probably worth looking into EcoVadis as well, but definitely worth having in because it gives you that third party almost verification working in the background. So should help as well.
Just got a question from Augustine there saying, is there a market for ESG in Africa? Definitely, in terms of if the organizations are selling into businesses within European countries, I would say is probably the opportunity there, where you will have to comply with frameworks, whether it's across the EU or into the UK as well.
Yeah, agree with Stephen on that. If there are suppliers that are based in Africa, the companies that they're supplying will start asking for more ESG data to be reported. So again, worth just having it all in one place and getting ready to go.
Yeah. And I think that I was talking to somebody yesterday who was they were working with a tier one supplier to OEMs essentially, and that supplier had 673 requests for ESG information in the last year as part of their sort of bid and supplier process. So it is becoming an increasing challenge. So good question there from Dave that's come through saying, from an SME perspective, do you experience common blockers to investing in ESG? I'm assuming that investing in ESG is within your own organization. Yes, it's the usual challenges within a small organization are one of often fiscal challenges, not fully understanding the benefits, business as usual getting in the way is often key things as well, or perceiving that there's going to be significantly more work required. I think this is one of the things that we cover off in the workshops as well, Dave, that we would talk to you about the barriers that you might face internally, what's going to stop you doing this, what's going to get in the way, what might derail your project as well, and how do you work around those things. One of the key things I see is typically organizations not integrating their ESG strategy with the wider business strategy as well. So the two things essentially diverse, they don't work in harmony. And that's one of the things we try and do through either the Bid Ready activity or the strategy workshops, just to ensure that, one, you understand those blockers and those challenges and you've got a plan to work around them, but also to make sure that you've got that synergy and that buy-in at a broader organizational level. And I think this is where things like return on investment come in. If your leadership team and the wider business is clear on the benefits and the risks associated with it and the cost against that, it's much easier to overcome those hurdles and those challenges.
Perfect. We're just over time, so we might leave it there.
Yeah.
Do reach out to us, though, if you want to chat about anything or have any other questions. We'll send you these slide decks so you can get the QR codes afterwards. One last one is just a bit of a plug for episode 2, so turning supply chain challenges into opportunities, and that will be with our head of sustainability, Bryony, and our environmental sustainability trainer, PK. So there's a sign-up code there, but like I said, these slides will be available after this is finished.
Well, thanks for joining us, everyone, and I hope to see you on one of the future webinars as well.